Hi, welcome to Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness with your hosts, Chris Noble and Bill Protzmann. In today's episode, we're talking about why you should join a band, or in other words, why you should play music with other humans. There are so many benefits to playing music with other people. There is the camaraderie, of course. There's also, of course, just the pure fun, the inner child play and bliss that you experience when you play music. There's so many health benefits to playing music with other people. It brings communities together, it relieves stress, anxiety, and it once again brings a positive and joyful emotion to the experience shared with everyone else. We'll be sharing our personal experiences and talking about lots of other things, as always, in these open conversations here on Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness.
3, 2, 1, go.
3, 2, 1, go. Let's get her going. Well, we're recording this on December 27th, although I know this will be playing in the new year. And for me, this was my first Christmas away from my family.
Yeah.
And that was it's been a really interesting experience because, of course, on one hand, the obvious emotions are I miss being back home. I miss being with my family. And one of the big reasons why is because we play a whole bunch of music over the Christmas holidays, or the 25th or the 24th and the 25th primarily. A lot of jams, a lot of music, a lot of singing, and just good times. And we've developed this tradition more and more as we've gotten older, and I've loved it. And so I was missing that a lot this winter, and I was like, okay, well, I'm just grateful to have anything happen. And I had a really nice dinner with a friend on the 24th. But then the 25th, I was invited to a party a little more impromptu, kind of last minute. And I went, and it just so happened that there was a bunch of musicians. And
Oh, perfect.
yeah. So all of a sudden, the host is like, oh, like I just hear music coming from the other room. And he's already starting to jam on the drum and start singing. And I'm like, oh, okay, these are like musicians. Like these are, and I look around the house and there's just instruments everywhere. These are real. It's an artist house. You can just start to get that sense. I didn't know anyone there at all, so I had no idea what I was getting into. And as more people arrived at the party, they're all just musicians, basically, or
Awesome.
other artists. Yeah. And so we ended up getting into these many hour-long jams, swapping instruments, everyone just playing different instruments, singing along, improvising or singing cover songs. Some played some originals too.
What instruments did you have? I mean, obviously drum.
So we had a djembe drum. We had this really interesting slide didgeridoo, and
cool.
oh my god! So the host, he's a bass player, multi-instrumentalist, but bass is one of his main instruments, and he was touring with an Australian band at one point, and they had this didgeridoo, but one of their signatures in the band was that the didgeridoo would change notes. And for listeners, if they're not familiar, the didgeridoo is it's a drone instrument. It's basically, and I and Bill, you might know more about the actual specifics here, but it just really plays one note primarily. There's a lot of harmonics, but it's just one note, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a drone, so you can't change it. With this guy's didgeridoo, because he could change the shape and size of it, making it shorter or longer, it would change tone, and you get a cool beat going, and then you get this kind of it sounds almost like a dubstep song.
Yeah.
Had a baby with some tribal shamanic dance music or something. And so that was another instrument. And then really beautiful Les Paul guitar, and nice acoustic bass, and some other percussion. I had my melodica, which
cool.
Yeah, that's a nice sort of accordion harmonica sound. And that's about it. And then we just saw a lot of people were singing, had a lot of people singing along, and the rest was just just jamming all night. And I hadn't had a jam like that since before the pandemic. I haven't played with a group of musicians in that kind of way since 2 years ago, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good for you.
Needed it.
Yeah, I know. It's so great when that happens.
I know. That was my Christmas. That was the Christmas gift.
Definitely.
I couldn't have thought of anything better than that. So yeah, that was really, really fun. And just a reminder of how important simple things like getting together with friends and playing music, or sharing your your favorite art forms, right?
Yeah.
Very good for the soul. Good for the
Definitely
soul.
good for the soul. That works so well on so many levels. And the fact that it's around such a, I want to say emotionally charged, so I'll just go ahead and say that. But holidays there's a lot of emotions
Mm-hmm.
swirling around holiday
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, doesn't matter. But to be able to have an outlet for that's musical, what a gift, right?
And it taught me the magic of music, because in this situation, I'm meeting all these people for the first time, and all of a sudden, by the end of the night, I mean, I feel like we're all like best friends at this point. We've all been
Right.
jamming together, having really really great conversation. These were also just very like people that are pretty aware, open minded, higher consciousness, spiritual people too. So they're very you can have really deep conversation just when you're meeting these people.
Yeah, just
So
right off the bat. You don't have
right
to
off
talk
the
about
bat,
yeah.
talk about the juicy, good, awesome stuff. So it was just a great night, and with the music being this perfect, magical sort of tie, it sort of bonded everyone. You could feel this energetic bond that music creates with the group of the people involved, and I mean everyone. There was other family of the hosts that were there, and they were just sitting on the couch absorbing all the music, big smiles on their faces, with
Yeah.
maybe a beer or a glass of wine and some cookies or whatever, and all snuggled up. But there's a fireplace too, and everyone was just, whether they were participating or just listening, it was such a wholesome. Oh, it's just such an awesome experience. Just felt, I still can feel the high, the afterglow from it. Thank you, music.
Seriously, yeah, isn't that amazing? I mean, I love experiences like that, even if it's something as banal as like a rehearsal, the band's getting together.
Yeah.
You know, um, even when you know everybody, you still find new stuff that you didn't know before. That not know is a really sort of limiting way of saying it, but you your acquaintance deepens, with every rehearsal, and it becomes very, very present to be in the space with other people who are making that kind of stuff happen, and very in the moment. And what a beautiful thing. I mean, we should let other people in on this, right? Open. It's musicians do this. It's just part of the practice, at least if you play with other people. And it's such an amazing thing. If everybody in the world could do that, I can see things like DEI just dissolving.
Oh yeah.
If you could apply a drum circle wherever there's some sort of diversity issue, all that stuff just goes away. It just disappears.
Mm. And it reminded me too of how much I missed being among peers and in person. Like, I'm so grateful for our conversations, because it's so nice to talk to another musician of like-mindedness, but to be in a physical space playing music with other musicians, what I also forgot I missed is that you speak the same language, and as much as everyone is musical, just like with any other profession, you're gonna have a particular bond with other people in your field, right? And your peers, and it's so important to have that. And that's something I also understood, that wow, I did miss that, because obviously I moved from my hometown, and I'm in a new city, and also there's a lot of other things happening on the planet that's making socializing and other things more just a little trickier. So it's understandable why it's been so long, but having now experienced it, I think I could say for anyone out there who, you don't have to be a musician to relate to this. It's just being among peers. I think that's really important.
I was thinking, as you're talking about my family at Christmas growing up, and I remember there were always some sort of Christmas sing that was organized. And once in a great while, they asked me to play for that, like make the piano music so people could sing.
Mm.
But I was thinking about the peers that we hung out with. So most of the time, the peers that our family hung out with were Dad's peers. So it was all engineers. And we were in Northern California before Silicon Valley was a thing. There was Stanford Research Institute. So there were some guys who worked there. These were like PhD, engineering, chemical physics, whatever, those kind of guys. And that must have been really satisfying, if it had Dad to hang out with those folks. On the other hand, we never had jams like growing up. There was some organized stuff, like in school, you'd do the Christmas program or whatever it was. And eventually we got into band and stuff like that, but we weren't hanging out on our free time with kids from the band. That didn't happen for me until high school when I actually had a band together that was fun to hang out with, right? But all the rest of that time, it's like, wow, man, what did I miss? You know, I could have been doing this. And maybe part of the brilliance of things like the Suzuki program, where they all get together and play violins, like hundreds of violins playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star at the same time. That must be so satisfying for little kids,
Yeah.
you know, who are barely just able to play the thing, but to know that they're in this giant peer group of people who are sharing that music with them. And it's not Christmas music, but it is a peer group.
Yeah.
And you know, I didn't get that until a lot later in life. I mean, high school. It wasn't the same thing playing in an orchestra. That, you know, the high school orchestra isn't quite the same as when you put a garage band together and really get to know people, and start to improvise. You know, get out the music. Mm-hmm. So that's a really curious thing to me, and I'm wondering, you know, how life could change. On the other hand, around our place, there's Christmas music here, I don't know, from July. We have infinite Christmas lists, and it all changes around the month of Christmas, or maybe the month before. We start streaming front to back all the Harry Potter movies. Like, so there's, you know, just this litany of Christmas stuff that we go through. There's probably 30 Christmas movies that we watch in the 2 months before Christmas, and there's some really good ones out there, and there's some really, you know, lousy ones. And no offense, Hallmark, if you're listening to me, because I just don't watch any of your stuff. The Christmas Prince, the Christmas Princess, the Christmas Family, the Christmas. It's like, come on, guys. It all sells great, but
it sells very well, actually.
You know, so I get it. I totally get it. But I want something that's a little bit more substantial.
Yes, agreed.
Right. So we're in the middle of I think it's jazz trio Christmas stuff. So piano, bass, drums, just kind of playing, just infinite playlists through Spotify. But the whole thing of getting people together for us was a little bit different this year, because we usually do have everybody together. Mm. And this year we kind of have them in sections. So we did one chunk of family, you know, 2 days before Christmas, the next chunk on Christmas. Then we had another chunk yesterday. And then, you know, it's just like it's staged throughout, I don't know, a couple of weeks.
Right.
But we've never really been a big musical jam family, which is curious to me. It's like, why not? There was a time we have djembes. Everybody in the family has a djembe here. So there was a time we were doing drum circles, and that was fun as a family.
Very cool.
But you know, teenagers have an attention span that's only about
bam.
Yeah. And
you know, it's funny. I can, in a sense, Bill, just relate a bit on that, because when I was younger, I remember I was less. I wanted to form jam groups. I wanted to, and especially in high school, I was absolutely adamant about starting a band, because I really wanted that experience. It took a while for me to start to rope. I just roped in all my friends who weren't even musicians. I was just like, just learn, just figure it
There's
out.
There's a trombone, figure it out.
Just take it, just anything, whatever. Just hit something. I need to play music with people. You have no idea. This desire now is at a point where it's like, it's just burning. And so I was trying to incorporate that, but I really like the amount that I jam now is so different than when I started, you know, my life as well. Very similar to you. There wasn't a lot of that kind of music and jamming in my childhood either. And I think it was from the absence of that and learning how much fun it is and how easy and good time it is for anybody at this point. I now just make it always incorporate it into my life as much as possible. But it wasn't like that in the beginning. You know, it took time to evolve. When I was a teenager, I remember at my family Christmases being so disinterested in any participation at all. And all I was aiming for was just to escape with my cousin of the same age and talk about whatever we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
And in a sense, as a teenager, all I wanted was to be among my peers, other teenagers, not be with the adults in those times. And I remember there was even the potential for jams, I think, or at least some carols. And I was like, carols. So, you know, there's that's just, you know, also just being at that age. Yeah, I can remember.
Yep.
And so it's funny how it's changed. It's really shifted from my childhood to now. It's kind of interesting.
That's I know there's a function of just like growing up, getting older, whatever, and interest changing. And I often wonder, because at least the literature that's out there on this kind of stuff is you're pretty much done by 3. Like your parental influence is finished when you hit 3 years old plus 1, right?
Wow.
That average, but generally speaking, and it's like, wow. So what do we do, right? As parents, you'll answer this question one day. But if you've identified something that's really cool for your kid, how do you best nourish that? And I didn't feel like music was very cool until I was in 5th grade, and it was a total chore before that. And it was actually a chore after that too, but something changed. And so I was able to enjoy it, which was easy for my parents to nurture because, we had the piano there. And they also were sort of able to push me into some things, but they didn't push me into groups. That came about organically, and mostly through the teenage hang thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, all of us play these instruments. Let's form a band. What kind of band should we form? Well, let's see. We've got a tuba player. What the hell is a tuba player doing? Right? But, a clarinet player. Pretty soon we had a Dixieland band. And so cool. Yeah, and it was because it was so novel. But nurturing that, I'm thinking about that. If I had kids, that I was teaching as a teacher, I don't know where I would exactly take them. I mean, there's so much out there now. You got YouTube that you can basically learn anything. Yeah. Except maybe the oboe. I haven't looked for Are there YouTube oboe videos?
Oh, you better believe there are.
There's got to be, right? There's probably sackbut videos and lute. I guarantee
you. Yeah. You name it, it's there.
So, how do you nurture that? And after you get through that and you finally establish yourself, it's pretty easy to pull a gig together or pull a rehearsal together. If you want to play for free, you can play almost anywhere. And if you want to get other people to do that, so it becomes easier. And I think, at least in this era, a lot easier than it used to be.
Definitely.
Find people who want to play. I mean, good heavens, there must be meetup groups.
There literally are. I even have a friend back in Toronto who joined a rock band meetup group. And what it literally is the same idea of organized sports. When you join a sports league, they'll put you into different teams. Instead, swap team with band, basically. Yeah. And then they set have a whole list of cover songs that they're going to learn. And then and then you get sorted by skill. So of course, it's all evened out in a sense, and they're more balanced groups. And then you learn through that, and you learn through, of course, being in a band, which is really fun. So that stuff exists clearly, and it's a professional kind of business that runs that kind of thing. And I have another friend who owns and operates a music school called Yellow Dog Music School, and it's essentially School of Rock, that kind of style. And the whole point is all the students that have one-on-one lessons there also form different bands, and then they have talent shows for everyone in the school that are all in these different bands. And I remember filming one for her once, and just to see all these kids of a real range of ages. There's some teenagers, 16-year-old playing with this 9-year-old bassist.
Yeah.
The bassist is so good though, right? He's just that much more advanced. So he was playing with the older guys, and they all loved it. And it was, you just see the bond that they're forming, the insane amount of fun that they're having. I was like, that is just such a healthy, great thing to see. I'm glad that exists,
Definitely.
Yeah.
We should spread that out. I mean, I know from LinkedIn and other places that there are pickup bands that happen within corporations. People know each other and they know they play, so they get together and there's a band afterwards. There's I think there's a LinkedIn group called CEOs Who Rock or something like that. And it might be out of Manhattan. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, so there's people who are doing music, and it's much more of an integrated thing. I listened to a podcast. My wife's taking French, and Duolingo has a whole podcast series. So you can listen to podcasts in the language that you're trying to learn. And the story we heard was about this guy who's an engineer, a nuclear engineer in France, but he had to keep his identity separate from what he loved to do. And what he loved to do was clowning. He has 2 gigs. So and he needs them both. He needs the engineering gig. And this speaks so much to me, having a bifurcated life with IT and music. So he needed the engineering gig, and he needed the clowning gig, because they both gave him something that he couldn't get any other way. And then one day somebody recognized him as a clown. It's like, oh my gosh. So he's learning now how to integrate the two. But the point here is, if you are in an organization where there's a lot of people and you do have some musical ability within the organization, which most do, why not use that? Why not leverage that? around, issues like diversity, which is a big one right now.
Nothing better than being in a rock band or a musical band to just throw all preconceived notions out the window and just be like, can you play? Like, do we play? Do we sound good together? I don't give a crap what you look like. I don't care where you're from. I don't even care if we don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
Like, can we play music together?
Yeah.
And that's all that matters. You just come together through that. It's a great way to break down barriers and stuff.
Wish I could remember the name of this crew. They're in Ukraine, I think. But they are hitting Chicago covers, and they are hitting, I think Tower of Power is in their book. And these are arrangements that have been meticulously, note by note, taken down from the recordings. And this band sounds better than Chicago, even though none of them actually speak English as a first language, right?
That's amazing.
And I'm like, yes, so that's some good music, right?
Wow.
But can you imagine taking the whole IT department and making them all drum once a week or something like that?
They get so much more work done.
Really? I mean, I know that they would, but
I think so.
I mean, you've got to have like a CEO that gets it, or somebody who's running the organization that gets, like, running your team and says, no way, go away, C-level person. I know what I'm doing. I'm taking this group on a drum trip.
Yep.
And here we go. And just getting there, right? I don't know how it's been for you, but at least in the world of business that I used to inhabit, the IT world, there are so many different races represented there, so many different cultures, so many different nationalities. And everybody speaks computer, and everybody doesn't speak English, But they're all able to do amazing things because of the common language they share. Why not take that concept, and spread it out around something as easy as playing the djembe? And it's not hard, people.
No.
You don't have to, know anything at all.
No, you really don't.
You're right.
Anyone's, well, I'm not a musician. It's like, yeah, neither is anyone else here that's going to be playing, minus maybe perhaps the leader, of course.
Exactly. Right? So this is only for people who are not musicians.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to be discriminatory.
Yeah. If there's any other musicians, you can leave.
Yeah. Or form your own group, man. Yeah. We don't need your snobby, ultra elitist music.
Get out of here.
And I've met people like that too. No disparaging remarks here, but your music is who you are. And if you're that way, whatever that way is, fill in the blank, right on that, whatever that is for you, awesome. The world needs you.
Yeah.
You were talking about playing the melodica. One of my favorite melodica players is Casey Abrams, whose first instrument is not the melodica, right? That cat can sing anything and play the upright bass or whatever, and he's amazing. And he also plays the melodica, right? You never would have known that. But if there was a melodica jam band someplace, he'd be there, right? If he found out about it. And they're just like that, right? You never know your CEOs can play amazing riffs on the guitar.
Right.
Right. But why not? I mean, it's not a talent show thing. It's a connector thing.
It is, because when I would see that and I'd hear someone, this is also back in my more corporate days with video production, I would have many, many interactions with people in the corporate world, different types of businesses. But anytime I would find we would get onto the topic of the arts or anything like that, I'm like, oh yeah, I got a guitar at home, and I'm like, oh, good to you. And then you start talking about that, and immediately the business conversation gets amplified like 10,000 times because you've now bonded over music or an art form that you're like, oh, okay. And you do, it's a connecting piece, even if you're not playing music together, just talking about it, you really do form a deeper bond. It's pretty awesome.
I'm a big advocate of starting with music. I'll often say when I've met somebody for the first time, well, not often, because a lot of the networking calls, it's just not, I mean, nobody wants to go there, but my favorite thing to start a one-to-one with is, so what's the song on your heart? And that produces a whole different conversation. If you say, well, so, what do you do for a living?
Right. I know.
Right.
Like, we connect on anything else.
Yes. I mean, I'm interested in the fact that, or this or that or whatever, you're selling your fifth company, but,
but let's also connect as humans and as, beings of music. We're all musical. So it's a great way to start something off. I mean, and I think it's just something that I could see being, honestly, you could create an incredible business out of it, but the business would be such a positive affecting thing, which would be, you could call it like a team building, a team building consistent weekly thing, like you said, once a week having a drum circle or once a week having a band rehearsal. It's the same thing as having an intramural sports league in your company. And lots of companies all have like whatever, like especially fantasy football or other things like that.
Yeah.
Why can't you have this other outlet that's a really also a right brain activating sort of thing too, and all the other healing elements of music on top of that, plus the camaraderie, the bonding, all, and then the productivity that will come out of that, because everyone is going to be that much more connected because they've connected through music. I'm sure if you took this idea, and anyone listening, you're welcome, but also remember this, because we get a credit of some of this. you could totally make this into an incredible business, because you could start to, once you start to get stats and analysis on how productivity would increase, and you could easily get that. Boom, that then you start pitching all the major corporations, and you could make it insane, killing it, creating band therapy or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
I hate the word therapy, but I know what you mean.
I'm just using it as an example, like band, and band, like band. It's like a band activity that results in much higher productivity and higher earnings for your business.
The name for it is Band Geeks.
There it is.
Yep. Inc.
Yeah,
Band Geeks Incorporated.
Yeah, Band Geeks Incorporated. Nice.
Right.
All right. You're welcome, listening audience.
Exactly.
There's another $1 million idea or $1 billion idea.
Hopefully,
yeah.
Because part of what you just described is the music care business plan.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, then it's definitely.
Definitely worthwhile.
1,000% it is.
Yeah, we're a bit more focused on consciousness, but that comes too.
Well, it's all connected, is it not? Right.
Totally. Yeah.
It's
totally.
I mean, just by having a band, geek session or whatever, with your fellow colleagues, it raises human consciousness, absolutely, because it's such a, of course, spiritual practice in of itself.
In the early 2000s, I think an outfit called Semper Sound got started, or Music Core. It's Music Core, I think is what it's called, out of Washington D.C. And they basically did the School of Rock for blown up military veterans.
Oh wow!
So whatever your abilities were, they slotted you in, and they had a couple of touring bands that actually went out there and played some pretty big. They played Carnegie Hall, stuff like that. And what a healing thing! And because they could tie it into post-traumatic stress, it was easy to get funding for that, right? So that kind of model has really spread out. And I think Semper Sound is the one that's out here. There's a music therapy association out here that does a band like that for guys that are men and women who are either veterans or have been sort of not separated from service, but who aren't doing what they came to do because of some injury or another. So they can participate in this thing too. And it's been really successful. I mean, in addition to all the goodness that comes from playing in a band like that, that you and I've been talking about, there's also some awareness that comes from that too, because when you see that kind of program, you go, oh my gosh, if they're traumatized, maybe that could work for me too.
Right.
And so it kind of drives, awareness of how powerful music can be in the face of really difficult circumstances.
It's that ripple effect.
Yes.
That vibrational pebble dropped in the pond analogy just ripples out, and it's all kinds of stuff like that. It sounds like the most simple things. I mean, and I truly believe that everything that we're facing in the world that is a challenge and something that people are freaking out about. I guarantee you the solutions can all be found in the most simple things, and really at the core of it all just being healing ourselves, doing things that are ultimately like extremely beneficial and healing for ourselves first and foremost.
Yes.
And then just doing things that allow us that deep bond and connection with everyone, no matter what your viewpoints, no matter what walk of life you come from. You sit down and you play music with others. Wow. It truly does break down every barrier, and you're just like, What's your name again? I don't remember, but you're awesome and I love you.
Right, right. And you'll never
that solo
forget.
was awesome, man. That was
solo was
amazing.
awesome, right?
I love that bass lick you just did. That was so juicy. And just feel that, like, wow. I don't even get your name, but you're the coolest person ever.
Right.
Like meeting people in that kind of way. Like how do you not have a deep connection after that?
Exactly. And what gifts are out there? I mean, like you said, the 9-year-old kid, but thanks to the internet, we now know about all these little prodigies that we wouldn't have known about otherwise. Yeah. We're doing amazing thing. There's that kid that plays Mozart with like 6 fingers total. and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And just the incredible stuff that's out there. Some of the little kids two of our kids, I think, were at School of Rock for a while. And some of these little kids would get up and solo and it was like, whoa, how did you learn to do that? Right. And they do. And not only that, but that's just one aspect of who they are, because they're these amazing kids.
Right. So multifaceted.
Totally. And it isn't like when I was in school, there was like, an amazing guitar player, but that's all this guy did. He did nothing except play the guitar.
Yeah.
Like 24/7 when he was not asleep, he was playing the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. That makes sense to me. But I mean, a 9-year-old kid that's able to solo like that and, plays soccer and,
it's not their main thing.
It's like he's got all this stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, they're
usually really, really good at the other stuff.
Yeah, and they're really good at everything, right? So they have to decide, well, am I going to, it's not like batting left-handed, right-handed. It's like, well, I'm going to play. And does this sound familiar? Football, basketball, or baseball? Which one shall I choose? Lettering in all of them in high school, and he's got scouts looking out. So what do? You can only choose one team.
I'm too good. Damn,
too good for any one team.
There's a lot of, I think the generation coming in is just they're just geniuses, like I really,
Gosh, I hope so. We could use one.
Well, I truly believe it. I think there's a different, this is totally other kind of topic, but I've read a lot in the ancient texts about cycles of consciousness, and we are on an upsurge of a cycle of consciousness. The Mayans have known about this for thousands of years, and it correlates right on track with all these other ancient cultures, independent of one another. So they all are talking about the same thing. And we've just exited. 2012 was kind of the bottom of that cycle. And now we're on the upswing, and we are waking up again, and we are discovering our our sort of place in the universe again, and our place with each other, and our connection, and all this kind of stuff. And I see it reflected in the kids of today, where they're just so wise and just, they really do seem to have a different level of consciousness, like in this world. And I feel very confident and excited for the future. Anytime I hang out with my nieces or any of the new generation, I get really excited, actually, because I think they're brilliant, to be honest. Just brilliant.
I hope so. The change, like from 2012 forward, that change is messy.
Oh, it's
like growth hurts. We got to undo all the stuff, and then we got to find new ways, and then put those into processes, and over a couple of generations or whatever.
Oh, we're still going through the growing pains, for sure.
The growing pains are, and I've heard people describe that several different ways, and I think I'm going to go with, I feel fortunate to be involved in that, to be a part of that, because the other side of that, if you're not feeling fortunate, you're feeling pretty distressed about it right now, because everything's coming apart. Like all the wheels are coming off, and you can't tell what's happening. And we've done this before, people. It's some book I read talked about the fourth turning, and it's a 400-year cycle of some kind. So there's studies out there. There's awareness about these things that go all the way back to ancient. And there's more modern awareness of it too. And they all seem to agree that this is cyclical, right? The oceans rise, the oceans fall. It's like, okay, that happens, right? It's just part of like breath. You inhale, you exhale. It just takes a lot longer when you're talking about mountains and oceans.
Just different timelines.
But here we are, and climbing up again. And I'm encouraged by that too. I'd better be on the upswing, even though the downswing involves things like the fall of Rome, right? It's a cataclysmic event. But what you learn from that helps to inform you on the upside, hopefully. And if the kids are paying attention, they'll take a look back. We've sort of, in the United States, our public education is disconnected from history. We don't do a real great job of instilling a continuum of how things look,
No, neither do we here in Canada. Very similar.
And that's a shame to me, because there's so much richness, as you know, from ancient history.
Oh my God.
And we could really be digging into that. Who's that cat that does the this not Socrates, the Stoic stuff? Ryan Holiday. There's
sure.
so many things about Stoicism that have come back to inform us here. I read Epictetus, years ago, and I thought it was pretty cool. And it's sort of like a life lesson. It's here's how you can do your life so that it really works and you can experience things fully without being harmed. And anyway, I love the resurgence of interest in ancient stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll learn something from that. We've pretty much driven everything else out. So
I'd say so. I mean, it's my intention with my project, Ancient Mysteries on Earth, is honestly like literally the catchphrase or like the mission statement is integrating the wisdom of, from the past into the present, right? And I really think that thankfully with the internet and where this new generation is literally brought in with the internet in full existence, they're able to access a lot more information outside of the school system, and they do it from a young age, and for better or for worse. Of course, it's the internet, so you're getting everything. But I know that all the kids that can kind of smell a little bit of the BS when they're in school, which I know they're awake. These are conscious kids, so they can smell it.
Yep.
They can smell when there's not the whole story being told here. Yep. And so they'll go online and they'll find there's so many other researchers that you can access easily all over the web, and just YouTube rabbit holes alone. And I hope to be a part of that as well, and educating people on all the incredible wisdom from the past, because it absolutely does affect your present, because it's understanding that we've gone through cycles like what we're going through right now is very reassuring, because we're still here and we've gone through them supposedly many times. So we're still around. We figured, we're very, very robust and good at, survival. And I honestly feel pretty hopeful for the future, because we are on the upswing. And as much as everything feels and looks around us currently like it's crumbling, I'm like, well, that's called metamorphosis. What was before has to basically completely die and decay for the new life to be born out of it. So that is classic transformation, and we're going through it. Thank God. We need to. It's not sustainable going the way we used to go. So I'm actually pretty happy, and the new generation seems, I think, actually well equipped on a consciousness level to handle everything. We just got to do our best to set up the best case scenario for them to thrive, right?
I like that, and I like that you brought consciousness into this, because there's so many different, I hate to use the word levels, but obviously consciousness expresses itself in so many different ways. It's like learning to play an instrument. You first play the simple stuff, and you play a little more complicated stuff, and eventually you get to a place where you can tackle the hard stuff. And you don't sit down and tackle the hard stuff right away, because you're not ready for it. Same with consciousness. You've got to grow through it, right? It's got to, there's a certain amount of effort you have to put in order to get there.
Yeah.
I'm particularly sensitive right at the moment anyway to the progression of transgender consciousness and watching how that's all shifted, because it wasn't that long ago where you couldn't even come out in public as a gay person. Like 60 years ago, it was rough for people, to be that way. There's a great movie with Cole Porter, I think, about Cole Porter, that discusses his difficulties at being gay and having to be married and appear this certain way and whatever, but everybody knew anyhow. And it's like, come on, what's wrong with this? I mean, you spend all your life just sort of managing your own self instead of being able to express who you are. But that's all changing so rapidly now.
I know.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago when we finally passed stuff like, gay marriage is now okay, right? And we had to do that through the government. Hello, government. Why were you standing in the way of two people that love each other?
Well, that's another question that leads to a much bigger conversation. Right?
Oh, sure. But the consciousness of government has changed. The consciousness of church has changed. Now, some churches allow gay people to be married, and some have gay ministers now that we didn't have before. And it's like this consciousness is shifting. And I don't know if there's a defined boundary, but the gender thing gives us a way of looking at that. And people who are on the forefront of that, leading the conversation, trans allies, for example, are just, the work they have to do is amazing, and it's all about love.
Mm.
And what do we hear from the rest of the world? Like, all there is love, right? So it's getting to this place where we're seeing objectively right in our face that love works.
Yeah.
And watching that whole process happen. So, hooray that we're getting through all these things. I mean, who knows what the issues will be 50 or 100 years from now that consciousness is dealing with? Because if this is as low as it's gotten, right, and we're not doing that bad, right? But if 2012
honestly,
was the bottom, it's
that's
looking
what
like.
I mean, right? I look at it, I'm like, guy, I mean, like, yes, things are a bit of a mess, but at the same time, could be a lot worse too.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd say we've done. We also got to give ourselves more credit. Most of the things that have gone on really happened from a very extremely small selective group of people making decisions. Most of us, certainly I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast, is in the category of the rest of the world.
Yeah, all of us are the rest of the world.
The rest of the planet. And I would say, to give ourselves a little bit of credit, we're doing all right.
Yeah, we are.
And we're really improving, and we're on the upswing. And, I feel like some people, and especially in, I would say, the generations maybe from like 50 and onwards or 60 and onwards, where especially the more people that are more conscious in those generations, I find I've had conversations where they're like apologizing on behalf of their generation to me. Like, I'm so sorry, Chris, we left you such a mess and this and that. And I'm like, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
You're acting as if you had any real say in the matter.
But isn't it, I mean, it's humorous in a way that you get to a place in your life where you realize how badly your generation screwed it up. The greatest generation is also the generation that, had to fight those wars. There was some crap going on in World War I and II,
Oh God.
Still today.
Absolutely.
It's like, well, why are we thinking that way, people? Because, we know it works. In any case, so I get it. I mean, I understand. And there are times where, as an American, I feel like I need to apologize to foreigners.
I have to give this side tangent. So, to give an example of what I've experienced, what Bill was just saying there, when I was 18, I did a Euro trip, and I remember I was in this hostel in Austria once. We were, the whole room of us, we were sitting around having a drinking game, and we were all introducing ourselves one by one. Oh, I'm Chris from Canada, and hey, I'm Sarah from Denmark or whatever. And it goes around, and there's this guy, I forget his name, like Sean or something. He's like, hey, I'm Sean. And he pauses. He's like, I'm American, but please don't hate me because and then he goes into this whole ramble about, I don't agree with our politics and I think you guys are really great, and we're like dying laughing.
Right.
Like, you sound awesome, man. No worries. Like, no.
I had a landlord who was Chinese a couple of years ago, and first generation. So he was like, his parents immigrated with him, but he was the one that took the initiative. He's into sciences and stuff like that. But I always felt so bad because of all the crazy that was going on between America and China. Still is, and as people like to say, it's not Americans, that are responsible. It's not Chinese that are responsible for this. It's, you just sort of are following the leader on this by default.
Mm-hmm.
And, but that's a consciousness thing too, right? We've become aware of the separation between the government, and the people. And
exactly,
the people are pretty dang cool.
They're awesome.
When you get right down to it, what an amazing world we live in.
Oh, when I was in Shanghai, and had the people were just like unbelievably kind, friendly. I mean, I just had such a beautiful experience with the people there, and everywhere I've been in the planet, especially places that get a really bad rep in the news or the media, or from our governments and whatnot, they're deemed third world places, things like that. I mean, I've just had the best experiences. People inherently are loving, are kind. People don't want to fight. People don't, for the most part, we're really peaceful beings, actually. I think we're just ramped up and like pitted against each other, and made to want to fight each other and manipulated to fight each other. But deep down, none of us want to.
Yeah, it's not. That's not what we
nature.
Do. That what is the Christmas thing that happened where it was in World War I. They were all in the trenches, and they had that Christmas soccer game or whatever. And when the generals all found out about it, they went nuts. But we're basically just people, right?
Of course.
Although there are some exceptions, I've got to make an exception to
Absolutely.
that because I learned yesterday, I guess, that Bishop Desmond Tutu had passed away. Archbishop Desmond Tutu had passed away. And first of all, what an amazing gift to be given leadership and to do that leadership the way that he did. Like the Dalai Lama, there's a great book they wrote together. I think it's called Happy. But I read about it by reading the Dalai Lama's sort of tribute to him. And it was all about joy, and having been there, whether chosen or not, but being the guy who catalyzed that for people was just, what an amazing thing.
Yeah.
We're talking about a level of consciousness that's completely different from somebody who sits in the White House, or wherever the power seems to be, right? Completely different kind of leadership. And thank heaven we can see that now, so clearly. I mean, everybody knows Elon Musk is crazy, but he's also brilliant, right?
Yep.
And so you forgive him because he's brilliant. Whatever Archbishop Tutu had to go through with that whole apartheid thing, I mean, he and Mandela lived that stuff. Yeah. Whatever he had to go through and still be joyous, right? It's choose joy, right?
Right.
And there's the Dalai Lama who got booted out of his own country and all of that, and still laughs and leads people. I mean, he's accepting the burdens, whatever the burden is, do it with a new kind of consciousness, and everything's cool.
Yep.
Right.
Literally.
It's okay as long as you can play music, right? Like honestly. That. It's okay as long as we can laugh. It's okay as long as, we, and I know veterans who do this, go beat the hell out of each other at MMA, and then they sit down for a rap session and everything is cool, right? Whatever your thing is.
Whatever your thing is.
Whatever raises consciousness, man, do that.
Absolutely. That's really what it's all about at the end of the day. And, kind of bring it back full circle to this idea of being around peers or finding new ways to connect with people.
Yeah.
It really doesn't have to just be music. If I know that's what we always continue to go back on because that's what's our thing, obviously. But for those listening, I think it's just so beneficial to explore your passions. I have a good friend who has really almost, I guess, rediscovered his passion for woodworking and just that physical, working with that element of wood and having to design things conceptually and then practically bring it into the third dimension through carving and cutting and sanding and all these amazing things. And he's found it to be his absolute go-to therapy. When he doesn't work in that, he's a salesman at a solar company and loves working in alternative energy. But so it's like to discover, and it's an art form, right? So I would consider his choice of woodworking to be dabbling in the arts in the way that just feels really good for him. And that's what I really mean to people. Like when you're with your peers, it's like, well, imagine doing that with a bunch of other people and you can all talk about the different tools you're using and you can just nerd out on all that stuff. And I know I love doing that with music and with film and things like that. I know everyone listening has something that they just love to get geeky about, love to get nerdy about, or very passionate about, and very likely aren't pursuing that as their main thing, which is totally fine. But to put some more time and energy into those passions, whatever they are, and then on top of that, to do that with others in that field, that same field. From recent experience, pretty amazing, and I truly forgot how important that is.
Oh, it's got to be like fuel.
It is
lifeblood. I hope that there continues to be interest in that kind of thing out there because we seem to be so driven by competition anymore. And I'm not talking about chess masters here. So if you're a grandmaster chess player, there's an element of competition that's really good. If anything, the sports, whatever, that's part of it. And I get that. But the kind of thing where you're always trying to put people down who aren't better than you is not living your passion.
No.
Just as a thumbnail. And you'll never find yourself in a jam like Chris was over Christmas if you're there to show off or, be your best or whatever else. You have no idea if that's been your thing. You have no idea what it feels like to be around a truly supportive group of people who want to see you at your best and encourage you in that way.
Yeah.
That's a completely different thing than, trying to run faster than the next guy or tripping them.
It's such a good point, Bill. Like, leave the ego at the door. It's got nothing to do with that. And when you're among peers, it's to support each other. It's to celebrate everyone's victories. The better these people play, that's great. It's gonna enhance your abilities too, just by being around them. And instead of getting jealous, and I remember even myself when I was younger at some jams. I was so much more concerned about how awesome I was going to sound, and I was overthinking like what kind of awesome riffs I could do just to impress whoever was in the room, right? And I totally thought that way at a point in my life. And you know, while I still had fun in those jams, I was never able to fully connect and make the deep, meaningful connections I'm making now because my ego was in the way, honestly. And now that I'm just there to enjoy people's company, and to be honest, musically speaking, helps so much more because when you can dial back your ego, you create much better pocket sonic environment for all the other musicians to play in
Yeah.
versus you just being like me,
Yep.
and then no one has room to do their thing, and you've kind of, it's not musically satisfying anymore anyway. So as a side tangent.
No, it's right. It's exactly in the pocket, you know?
Right.
And I think from my experience, not psychedelics, but stuff like cannabis, I know many musicians who have a couple of hits before they play.
Oh yeah.
I think that's part of it, is loosening up and letting go of some of that ego. And that's a great practice because then you show up and you're more with the group instead of in your own stuff. And that's a good thing. But with practice, I think you can achieve that
Oh, for
without
sure.
having to
Smoke weed
have
or
it, just smoke it away,
have a
right? Or
beer.
whatever,
Yeah.
doing whatever it is that takes care of that. Um, but I recognize the need for that because, yeah, you want to be open to creativity and having a tool to get you there, having a tool to check your ego, having a tool to open up to inspiration, to welcome connection with other people. Those are essential tools, whatever they are. Kind of really doesn't matter. Do that
Yeah.
because we need you guys to end this all together.
Yeah. Got
You know?
everyone plan. Everyone can contribute something. So usually a little bit of cannabis helps get the analytical mind out of the way and allows you just to be and enjoy. And you will always play better when you don't think.
Yes.
Always. No
Yeah.
thinking allowed.
No thinking allowed. Turn off your brain.
Turn off the brain. Get it out of here.
That's a great discipline, turning off the brain.
And it's something that takes time because I've been working on that for many years, and I've used cannabis for myself usually as the thing to help me before the gig, unless I'm singing, in which case I will definitely not, because it's just harder to sing when you've been smoking. I find for
Oh,
the
yeah,
vocal
because your
cords
throat
it's not
can close up.
helpful. Yeah, so then I'll just whatever. I'll just be sober and drop into it anyway. But I do find now I really don't need, like, I'll do it for fun more than anything, but I don't need it anymore. Like you said, you can absolutely get to a place where at this Christmas party, I drove there, so I didn't have anything to drink because I just didn't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Driving home, it was also a snowstorm in Vancouver, which never happens. It's very temperate here. It's so funny. I'm not from Vancouver, so for me, it's so normal to have a snowstorm. I've driven in many of them, but everyone that lives here freaks out when there's
Yep.
snow. It's so funny.
Yep.
But anyway, so I wasn't drinking and I was still able to drop in no problem. I was completely sober and I was high as hell off the music. Like I felt baked out of my mind.
We should
Just
do
from the
a show on that because, I've been saying for a long time that making music or being in music is the equivalent of being high.
Oh yeah.
And
For sure.
right.
Yeah.
But that's so foreign to so many people. And the fact that you can get to that place without using a Schedule One substance is really important right now as we shift in consciousness and move in this new direction. Like having a way to get there. And this is not to say there's anything wrong with you if you are doing psychedelics on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The intention is everything, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
So do that, but know that it isn't forever because there's this other place that you can train yourself to go that is remarkable, especially when you're there with somebody else
Mm-hmm.
or with a group of other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are doing the same thing as you. It's better than getting high on music.
It's incredible. It really is. And it's It's something I would love to talk about in a future episode because I have so much to say on it. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's my favorite drug. It's
Yeah.
music, I would say, of all of them. And I can do things now that, and I'll share this the next time we talk about it, but I can just do things now that I'm dropping into that high within seconds now. Like I can, if I
Yeah.
want to, I can quote unquote take a quick hit of music in ways now that I can throw out my left brain completely, drop in, and kind of like come out of it in whatever time it's been, and then just be like, wow, okay, yep, I'm pretty stoned.
It's the best way to play.
It's great.
And I've had the experience listening too. We got to do an episode on this because it's so powerful. It is so incredibly powerful. I don't want to say more than, because I haven't had that experience to be able to say that, but maybe you can say it. So we'll talk about that, because if you have a way of getting to that consciousness, like a reliable way, and you can just whip that thing out and engage anytime you need to be in that place. I mean, to me, that's the juice.
Oh yeah.
Right. If we could teach that to half a dozen people a day, before long, things would be shifting.
Oh yeah. 100%.
And that's the invitation, right? We bottomed out 2012, and now we're on the upswing. So let's get some effective tools into the room, and
let's start leveling up.
Yeah, level up, right? You can't do it with a wooden club. You're going to have to get some armor and a better weapon.
Yeah, 100%. But that's the whole point of this video game / life that we live. So
yeah, it's just all a simulation, right?
This is simulation.
It's just a big simulation. Okay, we're getting really weird now.
Yeah,
yes. I mean, people, this is where it is. People are thinking about it or saying these things, not just 100%. Me and Chris. So. Thank you for listening in on our conversation, and for taking time to show your appreciation with a like, share, or subscribe. Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness is a practice of spontaneity, and we welcome your comments, ideas, and questions. There are ways to connect with us in the show notes, so let us hear from you. Until next time, this is Bill Protzmann along with Chris Noble, wishing you great musical health. Samara Huchaya.